Source for local stories. I'm Michael Miller, bringing people together and sharing the voices, events, and connections that shape our community.
Cheers, guys.
That'd be true.
I'm all in to be the Miami-Dade County mayor.
That event. Tell everybody about it. What's next? What do we have to do?
Welcome to Live with Miami's Community News, where we bring people together to talk about the issues shaping our community. Today, we're tackling a topic that touches every parent, teacher, and student, which is school violence. Joining us today is Chief David Magnusson, who has dedicated years to public safety and prevention. Chief, let's start with this. What is going on with our community across the country and in our school systems?
Well, let's go back. First of all, thank you for having me here. Let's just go back just a week, what took place in Minnesota. Yet another school shooting. And with that comes that thought in the back of everybody, not just parents, everybody said, here we go again. And we'll get into it, but statistically, it was almost like you knew it was going to happen. If you're attuned to statistics, there are some that say statistics are like a lamppost for a drunken sailor. They're more about support than illumination. Nonetheless, you can do what you want with statistics. If I tell you that somebody failed 60% of the time, you wouldn't want them around. Yeah, Ted Williams batted 406, right?
Yes.
It's how you put the statistics in order. And I only say that because for this, over a period of time, and we're not talking about a couple months where you're trying to come up with some sort of pattern. We're talking about, and the statistics will bear it, going back maybe to the mid-'60s. Over time, the statistics show there is going to be school shootings. And on the basic definition of that one statistic, that's any time a gun goes off on school property. Doesn't mean somebody got hit. And so, some may say, well, okay, yeah, but nobody got hit. Well, I'm going to say this. You send your child to school. A gun goes off. Maybe somebody brought it to school, no ill intent. It goes off. How do you feel as a parent?
Right.
So not everything is nefarious per se, but with those numbers, you're talking about close to 3,000 school shootings from 66 to March of 2025, documented within the United States. Now, if you want to divide that by 58 and a half years, you come up with a number that's pretty astounding, that somewhere along the way, numerous times during a school year, and remember, we're not going to divide it by 12 months because they're off in the summer. You divide it by 9, numbers go up, right? Something is going to happen with a firearm in a school. That's the one place that there shouldn't be firearms.
So frequently what I hear, change the gun laws. Well, I'm curious about how many of these school shooters and outside of that also were the guns purchased legally? It seems I'm hearing that more and more often. Yes, the guns were purchased legally. So that in itself is not the problem, all right? We've got these people that find these sitting ducks. What is it about that these hunters, these people that are wanting to assassinate these people, right, in a closed environment, right? What is it about their psyche that causes them to go there?
Well, let's take a step back for the guns. I'm a Second Amendment guy. I'm also a person that believes strongly in gun training and strongly in gun education. And you can have all three. I mean, just to say, I'm a Second Amendment, I believe in all the amendments. Certainly the Bill of Rights, I believe in all the first 10 for sure. There's no argument with me. But to answer your question in one word, what does that? Well, not every mass shooter is a school shooter, right? And not every school shooting, as I just illustrated, is mass shooting. So what's the commonality with these people that go hunting people, whether it's in a supermarket in Buffalo, right? Whether it's in a school, Parkland, where? Evil. Now, not all guns are bought legally, and some are. And there's laws for that. I mean, if there's no red flag laws or emergency risk protection order type of laws, ERPO, it's difficult. I mean, people can go in and buy the weaponry. I mean, you don't have to go any further. Oswald got his rifle through the mail. It's a simple enough thing to do, I suppose. The vast majority of people that buy guns, the very vast majority of people with mental disorders or whatever stigma you want to throw at somebody, They don't hurt people. They don't look to kill people. They're good people. They just have their issues.
Let's look at down in Texas a couple of years ago when the police would not break into the school, if you will. They had to wait for the SWAT team or the customs or whatever. They went there. Who's in charge? But so they went in. They did whatever they needed to do. And at Parkland, one officer, I think, was charged with whatever it was. But there is this conflict that we're seeing about what do we do when we're on site, all right? The cops down in Texas didn't know what to do for whatever the reasons. This guy, whether you think he was right or wrong or whatever, they didn't go in. So the question that I'm looking at again is these poor students that are in the classroom, whether it's an accident, somebody shot themselves in the foot or whatever, and then you have these shootings. What effect does this have, not just on the families, but on those students, on the teachers? This seems like this is a forever issue.
Well, you touched upon two points here. Let me go back to the law enforcement stuff. After Columbine, there was a paradigm shift. You don't wait for SWAT, because it does take a while to mount up, get everybody together with the equipment, okay? You have to act. I spoke about this after Robb Elementary, Uvalde, and I spoke about it after Parkland. We didn't get drafted. We enlisted. Do your job. Do your job. It may not end well for you, but you know what? Do your job. At the flip side of having people get slaughtered. Now you can say, well, that's easier said than done. I suppose it is easier said than done, but I would grant you 99.9% of the officers worth their weight in salt are going to do what they're going to do. It should become automatic, especially when it deals with children. To the other instance, we had, and just looking here, Virginia Tech, that was a college, 23 wounded. I'm not counting the dead now. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, 17 wounded, right? And to answer your question, Robb Elementary, Uvalde, 17 wounded. You multiply that by the families and what they're going to go through. The people that are dead, but the ones that are wounded, they're going to carry that with them, that post-traumatic stress the rest of their lives. Same with their families.
If people have a hard time understanding about post-traumatic stress, for anybody that's been through a natural disaster, right, that you lived through, all right? I'm even thinking about Hurricane Andrew. I'm still getting goosebumps. That was 30 some odd years ago, right? And it's still fresh on my mind. No physical damage, but it's still there. So I can imagine the families of these people, right? And the survivors as kids were in the classrooms and their classmates were killed right in front of them. Terrible trauma. So I know there's no simple answer.
Well, it's also a vicarious trauma because, like I said, their parents, if you're talking about the children, their parents, their grandparents, they get older, they're going to be parents. Don't think that's not going to stick with them and how they parent based on what they went through.
Yes.
It is an incredibly large cycle that goes on when and no kid should have to go, nobody really, but no child especially should have to go through that. School should be the safest havens anywhere.
30 years ago, when my son, who's now 40, first day I dropped him off at school, first time I dropped him off at school, I wanted to walk him to class. No, Dad, I got it. And so he got onto the sidewalk. I'm thinking, all those parents that let their kids off of the sidewalk and they go to class thinking that it's a safe place, and 5 hours later they get the phone call. And you think about the trauma that's there, but what can we realistically do? Or maybe we don't have to be realistic anymore. Maybe we just have to act. What is it that we can do on site, right, which is the last place, or maybe it's the first place, to try to slow down those murders?
You know, the old adage, and you say to slow them down. So the idea, in my humble estimation, and I think I can speak for law enforcement, goes back to the old ad after 9/11 as we're approaching that anniversary. See something, say something. People need to speak up. And yeah, maybe online, maybe with threats, maybe, this guy from last week just hated just about everybody, even crossing political lines where you say, well, he hates this group, but he hates this group too. He hates the president. He hates this. Listen, there was hatred there. Somebody saw something. I mean, you had a 7th grader, and he was a lot older than this now, that was talking about how the kid used to brag about how he loved Hitler in 7th grade. Should that have raised some bells? Well, who would they raise the bells to? And I'm going to tell you who. Okay. The people that see it the most are at home, the parents. I can tell you time after time in these killers, and I'm talking about the younger killers. I'm not talking about like the guy in Vegas that started shooting out the window and killed 50 some odd people. We still don't know the story with that guy really, but I'm talking about the younger people that grew up in households enabled. They have become enabled. Columbine parents. I know there was some lawsuits thrown at them for Harrison Klebold. I can tell you Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook killer. His mother bought him the guns. And before he killed all those kids in the school in Sandy Hook, who's the first person he killed? His mother. As a matter of fact, he stayed in his room, all the shades down, and he had severe mental issues. If the mother wanted to communicate with him, she'd have to email him. The point being made, at what point should you say something? And there have been people that have been taken civilly and criminally, and as well they should. Yeah. I know that's your child, but you got a ticking time bomb.
So then what I'm sort of hearing is that not only do officers need to be trained, but maybe there's some basic things that can be done through the school system or through some sort of education. Hey guys, life is tough. Mm-hmm. People go under a lot of stress. Moms, dad, look for these symptoms, all right? Depression, overeating, undereating, drinking, staying in your room, spending all the time. And if you ever watch some of those TV shows where they show the kids completely out of control, screaming hysterically, I wonder how long and how often that has to happen before the parents finally do something. And we see the kids that are really addicts. How long does it take for a parent to go, I've had it, I don't know what else to do? Because we hear those stories all the time. The difference with that, they're going to ruin their families' lives, all right? But when you have the gun out, you're ruining other people's lives. So if there was a couple things you could do, and then money was not an issue, what might that be?
That's a tough question. Certainly access, and I think it's there now, but easier access to mental health professionals. You keep hearing the person had a problem, the person, whoever the shooter is, had mental health issues, and probably so, but it has to be that first step. The parents have to, you just mentioned the word, tears up the family. Yeah, well, if that kid of yours is taking out a bunch of children or shooting up people, you just ruin the family either. What you want to do is try to avoid it from getting from point A to point B. If you want to protect your child, you see something wrong, deal with it right away. I'm not a psychologist. I am a parent. I am a grandparent. So I can speak from the heart, and sometimes that degree is worth more than any mental health professional, because you're right there to see it. You're right there to see the good and the bad. You just can't be blinded by it. But that's not to say that all the people that are doing these acts, whether they're based on hatred, whether it's school shootings, what have you, have mental health issues. There's a variety of reasons why you have mass shooters. The guy I mentioned in Buffalo who shot up, he was an anti-Semite, but he shot up African Americans. Dylan Roof in the church in South Carolina a decade ago.
Do you think that the shooters have any concern about being caught or about dying, whether by themselves or by law enforcement? Overall, is there any concern for them?
Most of them take themselves out. They take the cowardly way out, and they are cowards. They write manifestos praising those that came before them, whether it's on a pad, whether it's a well-written thing on a computer. They write manifestos. They want to be important. They want to give praise to them, or they're online on 8chan, 4chan, all these other websites.
For the person that's not a shooter, sometimes cameras are something that stops people from doing stuff. I tell people, you're walking around, you got cameras on you all day long, all right? We know the county's got them. We know whether it's for garbage or speed radar type of stuff. So, and that's for the person that's not a shooter, but maybe who's going to do something that's violent. Is there stuff that we could do in advance at schools so that if there's a bad guy and he's a marginal, maybe he's not going to do it because maybe he might be a little scared. What might that be at the schools?
Well, I think cameras may keep a person from shoplifting if they know there's cameras. I think when you have that evil in you, that evil intent, once you make those plans, once you leave the house with that weaponry, wherever you're going, be it a school, a supermarket, synagogue, right? We're already one behind the eight ball. And how do police know about that before it happens? Really? You don't, unless somebody says something to you, or they're online and you have a unit that's watching online and say, hey, wait, what's going on here?
There were some parents recently, I think the mother and the father were both convicted.
That's correct.
And good for the state, all right, or whoever is state or the feds. Because when I watched what happened, it was like, what normal parents would do that? But if you're a very pro-gun person and you have guns all over the house, right, there are plenty of accidents going to happen, all right? And when we see these kids that are taking the weapons, it's not often, but they take a weapon to school. What is that about? And they don't shoot it. It's in their knapsack, and they get found out.
They get caught. It's an article of intrigue for them, of a gun. The gun wasn't kept safely stored at home, and that goes back to what I said at the beginning. I'm Second Amendment for sure, but that has to come with a healthy dose of gun education and gun training. You don't leave guns around. You don't leave them in cars. A car's not a gun safe. And you'd be surprised how many people I've run across in my years of law enforcement taking a report or getting a call. They stole the gun from my car. Well, why is the gun in your car? Car is not a gun safe. Well, I don't like to leave it at home. I have kids. I said, well, why'd you get the gun? Well, for protection in case somebody breaks in. So I said, how do you get to it if it's in the car? Yeah, but I got the kids. I said, then why don't you get a lock or a safe or break it down or put a lock on it?
I hear this story directly from the guy. He says, Michael, my biggest mistake is I had a gun, and somebody, when I drove up to the house, the door was open. He said, I ran in with my gun. He says, it was the stupidest thing I could have ever done. He went into it. Fortunately, nothing happened. The guys who broke in were already gone. But say he was running in, and what? Because that adrenaline got to him, and he was willing to risk his life when he could have just sat, call the cops, they'd come out, clear the house, and that would have been it.
Yeah.
So sometimes people get a little stupid.
Well, they get also a little sense of false bravery and not thinking clearly because they have the firearm. And that can cause you a lot of problems. Like you said, he could have waited outside, called the police, keep an ear and eye out. But,
so my son-in-law is a gun advocate. So he says, let's go down to the range. So we go down to Homestead. He's got all the weapons. And I'm going to tell you, down there, they're really careful, all right? He lays out all this stuff. I go, holy moly, all right? With the rifle and the pistol and all this stuff. And the training is absolutely required. And not just to get your license to get your permit, but ongoing all the time to refresh our brains, man. That's a loaded gun. When I was about 15 years old, I was at the Serpentarium. I used to go there all the time. And in the back, some guys lived back there. And there was a gun on the bedside. I picked a pistol up and I pointed at him. And he said, Michael, the gun's loaded. It was a half a second away, right, from me probably pulling the trigger. I'm positive that would have happened. Had he not said anything, I probably would have done that. And so, for sure, even if people don't like guns, they're going to be around it because I don't know what percentage of people have weapons, but it's a huge percentage. Huge percentage.
And again, education and training. Every gun is loaded.
Yep.
Every gun is loaded.
Let's talk about stress on a policeman when I don't know what percentage of cars that they stop have weapons in them, but it's got to be, in Dade County? 1 out of whatever number it is. But during their day or their week, they pull over people that have weapons in the cars. And some of them are bad guys, all right? And some are good guys. So how did the police handle that stress? You were on the street. How many years were you an officer?
Well, total in law enforcement, just short of 37 years.
You're only 52. How did this happen?
41.
41. So what was it? Tell us about the stress level on policemen, knowing that there's probably a weapon in the car and it's probably loaded, and the guy's not happy that you pulled him over.
Well, let's just talk about traffic stops. That's the number one problem for law enforcement, the traffic stops. The domestic violence calls traffic stops. You don't know what you're getting. You don't know what's in the car. If it's a guy that's not or if the guy's a little bit of a savory character, you can probably bet the bank that what he or she, could be either, is telling you is far from the truth. Waiting on backup, and sometimes backup's not there, and you got to act. And again, there's where training comes in too for law enforcement. How you're going to handle this? How you're going to handle this call? Do you call for backup? Obviously, you don't call for every traffic stop. You get a sixth sense to certain things. And yeah, you're going to have people with guns in them, and they're going to say, I have a gun in the glove box, officer, or I have a gun under the seat, whatever the case is. Let's step away from the cars, though, now. I mean, just a couple years ago, now everybody, unless they have, a record or they've been arrested or what have you, they can carry a gun concealed without the training, without the permit. So as far as you know, everybody walking down the street, if they have a loose shirt on or a cover jacket, they could be holding. How do you handle it?
So we talked a little bit about the schools, but there have been some public meetings in which an upset citizen walked in. I remember, I see the picture. He walked up to the
council
and shot one of them.
That was about a decade ago, right?
Yes, flat out, just like that. Mm-hmm. And that's somebody that just got pissed off at whatever it was, all right? And I wonder how long that was brewing. And I remember when the city of South Miami had to actually put up a sign.
Most government buildings, you can't bring firearms in there. You can't.
So that was a change that occurred, I don't know how many years ago, Dade County Courthouse, where they started doing, was that 20 years ago?
More than that.
Yeah.
More than that. You can't bring firearms into, No. Yes. And you don't want that. But it goes to what you're saying, too. Suppose that angry person was there yelling at that councilman. I remember that video. It was horrifying. And didn't have a weapon there. People reach to it. Maybe if they had a chance to think about it, they wouldn't do it. But that's a far cry from when we're talking about school shootings, when we're talking about the shootings over hatred, even going back across the world to New Zealand. When the guy shot all the people up in the church, the mosque, and was filming it live as though to impress other people. It's contagious. Hatred's contagious, and like the measles, and there's no vaccine for it. You want to say, well, listen, we can all sing Kumbaya. There's bad people out there that are just looking for an excuse to hurt others. That's just the reality. It's not to scare people. I think the main step right here is how can we identify them before it happens so that there could be a law enforcement intervention.
So meanwhile, the parents and a judge maybe is going to say, you don't have enough evidence to do anything. There hasn't been a crime yet. All right, he's saying some stupid stuff. So it's sort of that balance, especially when the parents are being protected for whatever reason. And if they've done something wrong, the parents, right? I say wrong, right? That they're more likely to, I guess, to protect the child. So how do we get to the parents and say, listen, if you have weapons in your house, this is what you need to do. If you see some sort of behavior with your children, right, you need to do something. But if you're a hunter, a real hunter, all right, or you like target practice, weapons are everywhere, right, in the household, supposedly locked up. So what could be a message to parents of law-abiding adults who have children that want to have weapons for whatever the reason is?
Again, training and education. You just hit on it. All right. There's two different things you talked about, but if you have guns around the house, lock them up. Don't let children have access to them. They shouldn't. Children are naturally curious. You go out and the kid's watching the other kid or something, they're going to be snooping around for something. It's just the nature of the beast. Don't make it easy for them for a gun. Now, I'm not saying the kids are going to do something ill-intent, nefarious. Accidents happen. The other part of what you said, if you see somebody that has an adoration for weaponry, even if it's not your own, maybe they're trying to get weapon, maybe they're begging you to buy them a weapon, maybe you see something that doesn't sit right. Listen, don't take it for granted. I still say one of the biggest issues right now, and it's not just in shootings, I just see it all over the place, are enabling parents.
By the way, changing laws, people are, we should change the laws. But when you look at the people that recently been shooting, they purchased those guns legally. And so changing laws, right, that's wonderful. Is that ever really going to work, all right? I think in this big picture, maybe the guy that's in the center thinking, well, maybe he'll do something, maybe that might slow him down. But the bad guys, the ones that are ill, right, it doesn't matter. They're going to go find that gun, and they're going to do that. So We've got about about a little bit less than 10 minutes to go. So what can adults do when they see some aberrant behavior, whether it's a guy walking down the street or whether there's something going on in the school?
Well, first of all, report it. You know, you don't want to get to a point now where you have neighbor complaining on neighbor for everything.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that are going to stand out. There's certain things that, and I'm going to say the average conscientious person is going to say or look over somewhere, say, this isn't right. Now in school, the teachers are equipped to deal with that. They see things that aren't right. They're good at that. The school resource officers are good at that. Police are good at that. To a certain extent, something's not right. But I'm going to circle back to what I said throughout the course of this conversation. Nobody sees it better, assuming school-age kids or people still living at home as adults, young adults, than the parents. They see it. They see what's going on. And so, with that in mind, it's all a matter of, listen, don't sit back and think this is going to get better on your own. If certain behaviors manifest themselves, do what you can, bring it to the attention. Somewhere along the way, these people need to be on a radar. Now, if you're saying somebody goes into a gun store that has issues, yeah, but if nothing's documented and nobody knows it, we find all these things out ex post facto. Okay, Then you say, well, how did he do it? Well, nobody knew at the time. And they say, well, what about that guy? He went into the store and bought these guns legally. Just look at him. Okay, look at him. So what? You can look at it however you want. There's no violation of your Second Amendment rights. If it was documented, if they can go to a source and say, no, there's a red flag law, ERPO, whatever, maybe they wouldn't have sold it to him. But that being said, there's a number of things that could be done, but they have to be before something happens,
So I understand when there are gun shows, you can go and you can buy a weapon right there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's just the way it's built. And I'm wondering about all these people that have murdered other people in schools or mass murders. Their weapons, they were either illegally purchased or they were legal. And it really doesn't matter. They have this weapon. They've gone like off the rocker. And getting back to this, for the most part, those people that are the shooters, for the most part, they wind up dead, one way or the other.
Well, they know they're not going to get themselves out of it. It's very few that leave the scene. They either get taken out by police or more so they take themselves out in a cowardly fashion.
And so when you think about what happened down in Pennsylvania a year and a half ago, so here's this kid, all right, young guy, I think, right there, FBI's there, everybody's there. And then it just didn't work. There was this miscommunication that was there. People were saying that, there he is. It reminds me of Martin Luther King, where they're all pointing to the shooter. And you're thinking, well, how did that happen? Because wires get crossed, and I get that, all right? So here we are. Schools down here just started, all right? We have a new school year here at Miami-Dade County School Board. There's 13,000 less kids in the schools this year than last year. We're going to be talking about that. I'm going to bring up about public safety. So what if you were sitting on a committee with the Dade County School Board, and you're there because you're 30 plus years experience? What would you want to be able to tell them?
Regarding school shootings?
Yes, yeah.
Well, let me tell you, school shooting incidents, there's been 8 this year so far. On average, throughout the country, 2024, there were 39, 38 and 23, 10 and 20. So, it went down. No, there was no school. There was a pandemic. It averages 35 school shooting incidents. I'm not talking about the accidentals now. I'm talking about when somebody gets shot and or killed. 35 throughout the country during the course of the year, going back 8 years. That's a pretty good statistic to hang your hat on.
That's out of 52. Actually, it's not actually 52 weeks. It's
right. It's less than that. And I counted for that. I divided it by the 9 months. 35 school shooting incidents a year. So you do that, divided into 9 months. You're talking about there's 4 incidents. We're going to turn on the TV around the country. We don't know where it's going to be. Around the country, almost 4 a month during the school year, it happened again. So with that mindset, keep in mind that if it's that often, and that is often, especially when you're sending your kids to school, you got to be very, very proactive. And I know they are. I know they're trying. And you got to anticipate things that you can't even think of today, but you may tomorrow. All right. There is a problem. There is a massive problem here. You're sending your kids to school. What? You're kissing them goodbye at the bus stop, or Dad, I got it. I'll walk myself. That's the last time you're going to see them. I mean, people need to really stop and think about that. It's horrid what's going on here, and it surrounds itself with evil or whatever the reason is. But schools should be safe. And I'm just telling you by the statistics. By the statistics, I would say within the next month or two, somewhere in the country, and it doesn't matter where it is, you're going to hear a similar story. And you say, well, where in the country? Who would have thought? Let me tell you something real quick. The things that scare me, that keep me up tonight, are the December 6th, the November 21st, the September 10th, because we don't know what the next day bring. Anybody that would have thought of any city in the country in 1995, Oklahoma City was going to get bombed. Nobody would have picked Oklahoma City. So when you're sitting there talking about schools, well, it's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen over here. You don't know that. And that's why you got to act with a great deal of caution and try to nip this in the bud as best you can.
So I hope the new superintendent's been there for a couple of years. I hope they come up with something so that they can tell the public, including the parents, these are the things that we are doing to try to stop and try to make the schools a safe place, because that's what we want our kids at. Where I go to practice religion, I hope that every guy in there's got a gun. They got a guy walking on the outside, all right, with a gun, with the police car out there. Because you realize you never know where that hate, that anger is coming from, and what's going to stop them. And that wouldn't stop somebody from storming it, but you know what? It might stop the guy from thinking about even from the get-go to do that.
It may be a deterrent, but I would argue with you, once that offender or offenders, and we keep talking offender, we never talk about multiple offenders. Yep. But once that offender gets on scene, be it the school, be it the synagogue, the church, the mosque, it's too late. The idea is to catch them really before they do anything wrong.
Years ago, when I was a kid, Judge Robert Deal took a whole group of us down. It was Scared Straight. He takes us down Dade County Jail. And I want to tell you something. I remember that jailhouse like it was yesterday. And then at the same time, my father would tell me, if what you're doing will not pass the Miami Herald sniff test, don't do it. And those two things, all these years, kept me out of trouble. The time where you could do this or you could do that. You know what? If I run a stoplight on the right side, you know what? I'm gonna if I get a ticket, what a grief that's going to be. All right, to have to do it. But that's for me and people that are like me that say I'm not going to do that. And so I hope there's enough people that are right on the border that remember. All right. If it can't pass the test, what you do publicly, what you do, if the whole world will see it and you're okay with it, great.
Conscience needs to kick in before the act.
Yes.
Not after, because everybody's always, I'm sorry I got caught. Yeah, you're sorry you got caught.
Yes.
The thing is, and that makes a great deal of sense, but when you're dealing with pure evil,
yes,
how does that work?
And we've seen that.
And we have seen that.
So we're going to wrap up, David. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to look right over this way. So today's guest was Chief David Magnusson. Reminds us about violence in schools and all over the country, in particular, small actions that we can take, teachers and police officers, sometimes they can slow it down a little bit. So as you're saying, if you see something, say something, because we're the first stop on that. So if you're a parent and you have weapons around, all right, make sure you follow the rules, make sure you lock them up. If this matters to you, get involved with the government. Send letters to the school board. Send letters to your state representative. Call 911 if there's an emergency. Call your congressman and say, I want to get involved. And if you don't know how to write a letter, just go to chat.com and say, write me a letter, all right? And then you can send it to folks. You can go on any of their websites, get their mailing address. Chief, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And thank you for decades of great service.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to look right over there. And listen, folks, there's an old saying, it's called the Disney rule. The Disney rule is when you hug someone, don't stop until they do.